Hi everybody, Steve Griffiths here, developer of the MTPredictor software program. In today's MTPredictor video, I'd like to have a look at some of the new features in our brand new MTPredictor version 8 that's just been launched, in particular looking at some Forex examples. But before we get onto that, I'd like to look at our risk disclaimer and remind you that all examples in these videos should be considered as hypothetical. No trades were taken, they're only just shown for illustration and training purposes only. There's a risk of loss in trading and investing. All professional traders should know and understand that losses can and will and do happen, and we'll be looking at some losing trades in this video as well. Right, let's move on to a chart. The chart I want to look at today is the US dollar Japanese yen. This was actually a question that was given to us by one of our current users, Bill down in Australia, who trades Forex with MTPredictor, and he was looking at this VS sell setup on the 4-hour chart, and also this TS4 Holy Grail buy setup here that ended up in a losing trade. So let's start off by looking at the losing trade first. It's always good to look at losing trades. If we zoom in here, you can see there was actually a history triangle there as well as another trade setup there. So let's right mouse click over this blue buy bar, do the analysis. Our MTP trend was up, and therefore it was a good trade to take. You were actually just taken in and then stopped out, and it would have been a losing trade. Remember, we use correct position sizing to vary the number of lots, contracts or shares, in this case lots because this is a Forex. So here this is mini lots, keeping the initial risk less than 2% of a sample $20,000 account. So that would have been a losing trade. If I clear it off, there would have been another losing trade off here. As if we do the analysis, you can see the market went up. It actually went just beyond the 100% initial risk guideline, so maybe you would have put your stop to break even. But let's take a worst case scenario. It came down frustratingly, just took you out before then rallying back up again. So let's take this as a worst case scenario and say another losing trade. So that would be -2R loss. Remember, losses can and will and do happen. The trick is keeping them small. Let's just clear everything off. If I go back a bit, there would have been a DP buy here on blue stroke black MTP trend. Let's place the analysis on. Market goes up to the first target here. Excuse me, got a bit of a cough. But can you see here how this trade would have made a profit, but the profit would have been plus 5.4R, or 5 times greater than initial risk. Or put another way, this would be plus 5. These two trades here would be -2. And therefore you'd been +3 overall. That's what's good about MTPredictor, in that we try to keep our profits large and our losses. We don't avoid losses. We know and understand that losses can and will and do happen, and they do unfold, but the losses are kept small. So that was a good example of a profitable trade there. But the one Bill was asking about was this VS setup here, and in particularly how it fitted in with our larger degree trend analysis. On our MTP trend, at the time this VS sell was on a grey MTP trend, because if I go back to the last pivot, it was actually at major resistance. You can see how it came into major resistance. Our MTP trend, which is new in our MTPredictor 8 new version, went grey. In other words, it was saying the market was at an area of where the trend was likely to change, and that gave us a sell setup in that area, and one you were allowed to take. The market has since come down, and the MTP trend has turned red as the market was coming down. But let's go out to the higher time frame chart, which in this case would be the day chart, and let's do what we normally do, place a DP on from the prior pivot, which is here. And if I go back to the 4-hour chart, that is actually the same DP resistance. So it would be major resistance on the 4-hourly chart, or higher time frame resistance off the daily chart. So it would have been a good trade to take. Right mouse click, do analysis, and this would be our target down here. But again, this is what's good about our MTPredictor trades, that if this trade works out, and obviously we haven't got there yet, this is partly why I wanted to do this video, to see whether the Japanese yen does indeed decline down to here. It would have been or would be a potential 8.8 or almost 9R profit, or almost 9 times greater than the initial risk. So this would be a good trade to take. We don't know whether it's going to go down here. All we know is that if it does, the profit would be just over 8 times greater than the initial risk. If it doesn't, by now you'd probably have your stop to break even anyway. For you guys who want to trade on slightly shorter time frames, exactly the same procedure has evolved. Let's put that 4-hourly DP on so that we know this is in resistance here. If I now go down to the hourly chart, you can see my analysis I've just done here on, if I clear this off, on what was a beautiful Holy Grail trade setup. What is a Holy Grail trade setup? Well, if I right mouse click down here, do Elliott Wave Major, a Holy Grail trade setup is where the market comes off a major high, in other words a high on a higher time frame resistance or DP. The initial move down is a wave 1. The initial correction up is a wave 2 that should subdivide into an ABC, which it did. We're then looking for a strong wave 3 kind of decline, which is exactly what unfolded. This all unfolded at where the MTP trend was red as well, so it gave you permission to take that on the downside. Let's right mouse click here, do the analysis. You see the market came down, and at that level it would have been a plus 6.7 hour profit. Again, I wish I'd done this video yesterday because I was looking at this very setup yesterday to try and do the video when the market was in and around this area here, so before this sharp fall. But hey ho, it's sometimes you can't get the videos out done in time because there's other things to do with supporting current customers. Let's have a look at some of the other setups. This TS3 buy setup was against a red MTP trend and was not one to take. This VS sell here would have been a losing trade because it came down on a red MTP trend and would have stopped you out. Remember, losses can and will and do happen. This trade here would have then been a plus 6.7 hour profit, so a good example of a profitable trade. The Holy Grail trade setup is one of my favorite trade setups, and it's the reason that MTPredictor was first developed back in 2001. So what's that, 16 years ago now. The main reason because this is a wave 2, and if you can catch the very end of a wave 2, it allows you to get in with a small controlled risk, and because the next wave is most likely to be a wave 3, which is the strongest and longest wave in a completed 5-wave sequence, this is most likely to be the largest swing in relation to the smallest initial risk. So that's why I've nicknamed this a Holy Grail, not because it has a high percentage of winners, but because when the profits come through, they're normally large, very large, in relation to the small initial risk. So I think that's what is the Holy Grail of trades, is a trade where the potential profit is large in relation to the small initial risk. So this is a good example here of the new features we have in our MTPredictor version 8. The first one is the Holy Grail trade setup, which is capable of finding the end of a wave 2 to get you in for a strong wave 3 move, and also our new MTP trend, which as you can see changes very quickly as the trend moves from up to flat to down, to again get you in the right direction as a new trend evolves. So a great example of the Holy Grail trade setup on this US dollar Japanese yen on a 1-hourly chart. But if we go back to Bill's question and on our 4-hourly chart, this VS setup again is another new trade setup that we have in our MTPredictor version 8. It's where the market makes a high volume spike as it breaches a previous high or low, in other words makes a fake out. It's where professional money gets in the opposite side to a move or break into new highs or lows. It's where amateur traders get caught on the wrong side, and it's where the market makers then fake out in the opposite direction to move back down, in this case catching amateur traders who are long as the market then moves out. So a good example here again of one of the new trade setups in the new MTPredictor version 8 version. So to answer Bill's question, yes, this does look like it's a good trade setup on a black MTP trend. Market's going down, so we're very interested to see over the coming days and weeks whether the Japanese yen does indeed decline down into this area here and his 4-hour trade does make it, and if it does, it will be a very nice profit indeed. But on the way down, on the shorter time frame, as we've seen on the 1-hourly chart, a great example of our Holy Grail trade setup, which would have netted just over 6.7 hour profit. So a couple of good examples of the new trade setups and new MTPTrend Indicator, which is in the brand new MTPredictor 8 version that had just been released. And today we're looking at examples in the Forex market, in particular US dollar, Japanese yen.